You open your banking app, look at the numbers, and your chest instantly constricts. It's not just a passing worry about a single bill. It's that heavy, exhausting weight in the pit of your stomach that whispers, "What if I can't make ends meet? And how long will this last?" The questions start running in your mind. Has God forgotten me? Because if he hasn't, why does provision feel this inconsistent? Why does trusting him feel hard? This is the inner atlas, where we map the inner life. Many people have read Matthew chapter 6 during a financially difficult season, and instead of feeling comforted, they walked away feeling worse. Because when you are genuinely struggling to pay bills, the phrase "do not worry" can sound less like an invitation and more like a quiet indictment of your faith. So the anxiety about money quietly becomes anxiety about your faith. You start wondering if your financial situation is evidence of something. Maybe you are not trusting enough. Maybe you are doing something wrong. Maybe God is withholding because of something in you. And the silence makes it worse. You have prayed. You have been faithful. You have tried to trust, but the numbers have not moved. And when provision is delayed long enough, the silence starts feeling personal. There is also this draining tension that builds over time. Part of you feels like you need to do more, hustle harder, find another income stream, or figure something out. And another part of you feels like striving is the opposite of faith. So you end up stuck somewhere between the two, not fully doing either. Then there is the shame. Financial struggle carries a particular type of shame, because somehow, what you have or do not have starts saying something about who you are. It stops feeling like a difficult season and starts feeling like a verdict. Financial anxiety is not just about money. Psychologically, money represents safety, stability, the ability to care for yourself and the people you love. So when income becomes unstable, the nervous system does not just register a financial problem. It registers a threat, and it responds accordingly. Research shows that living under prolonged financial pressure actually narrows your thinking. Psychology sometimes describes this as attentional narrowing. The mind becomes so consumed by immediate survival that the bigger picture becomes genuinely harder to see. Future possibilities shrink. Hope gets harder to access. The world gradually collapses into one overwhelming question: how do I get through tomorrow? Without realizing it, many people begin letting their financial situation define them. Your income becomes your identity, your struggle becomes your self-assessment. If I were wiser, I wouldn't be here. If my faith were stronger, God would have provided more. The money stops being a circumstance. It becomes a mirror, and it is showing something painful. Chronic uncertainty is also tiring in a very specific way. The brain never gets permission to rest. It stays alert, scanning, and calculating. That is why waiting for income can sometimes feel more draining than working long hours. It is not the effort that wears people down the most. It is the not knowing. The nervous system cannot relax when the future feels like a threat. Financial insecurity also subtly produces a specific temptation: the need to control everything within reach. Obsessively checking accounts, running worst-case scenarios repeatedly, overworking to eliminate every possible gap. These are attempts to soothe anxiety. The belief driving it is, if I can just control enough variables, I can make the uncertainty go away. And that belief is exhausting to live from. Probably the deepest psychological insight in all of this is that financial hardship does not just create emotional pain. It creates interpretive pressure. The bank account starts explaining God. Instead of viewing circumstances through what God has already revealed about himself, people begin reading God's character through their changing financial situation. That reversal is where so much of the instability comes from, and you are far from alone in experiencing it. Matthew chapter 6 is often approached by jumping straight to verse 25, "Do not worry." But that verse does not appear in isolation. Just a few verses before it, Jesus has just spoken about where the heart stores its treasure, what shapes a person's inner vision, and who ultimately masters their life. Only after that does he address anxiety. The sequence matters, because anxiety is not the starting point, it is a symptom of what the heart has been trusting. And when Jesus says, "Do not worry," he is not commanding emotional suppression. The Greek word Jesus uses is merimnao, and it does not just mean thinking about tomorrow. It carries the idea of being pulled apart, being divided. That image is so accurate. Part of the heart wants to trust God. Another part is desperately reaching for certainty. Financial anxiety does not just create stress, it creates a divided inner life. And that division is taxing in a way that is hard to explain. He is calling his followers back from allowing those real needs to become the governing center of their inner life. Then Jesus says in verse 26, "Look at the birds." And this image is often misread. Birds are not passive. They search, gather, and build nests. They expend real energy every single day. But they cannot secure tomorrow. What Jesus is pointing to is a life that participates fully without carrying the illusion of being the ultimate source. Provision and effort belong together. The birds are not lazy, they are just not pretending to be God. This connects to something Jesus teaches just before, in the same chapter, in verse 11 in the Lord's Prayer, "Give us this day our daily bread." Not lifetime guarantees, not complete financial clarity for the next 10 years. Daily, one day at a time, that is not a consolation prize. It is a deliberate invitation into a particular kind of relationship with God, one built on ongoing dependence rather than accumulated certainty. That pattern goes all the way back to Israel in the wilderness in Exodus chapter 16. God provides manna every morning, not once or in bulk, but daily. And he tells them directly that this is a test of trust. Attempts to hoard it fail, because God is not simply meeting hunger. He is reshaping how his people relate to provision. Dependence is not a phase to move through. It is part of the formation. Scripture keeps returning to the same truth through different people in different seasons. Abraham names the place where God provides, "The Lord will provide." Hagar, alone and convinced all hope is gone, has her eyes open to a well she could not see before. Elijah, fed by ravens and then by flour and oil that simply do not run out, through a poor widow. 3 different people, 3 completely different channels, the same source. That is one of the most important distinctions in this entire conversation, the difference between a source and a channel. A job is a channel. A client is a channel. A business is a channel. Channels change, slow down, and close. They shift unexpectedly, but God is the source, and the source does not change when a channel does. Paul writes about this in Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 to 13. "I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength." Paul is not writing from a comfortable position. He has known hunger and imprisonment. Contentment, he says, is something that is learned, formed through relationship with Christ, not through financial predictability. Jesus himself does not just teach Matthew chapter 6. He lives it. He accumulates nothing. He accepts hospitality. He is supported by those who travel with him, as Luke chapter 8, verses 2 and 3 record. He feeds hungry crowds and entrusts every moment to the Father. His trust is not built on comfortable circumstances. It is built on the Father's character. Matthew 6 is not abstract theology. It is embodied by Christ. We need to be incredibly clear about what Matthew chapter 6 is not saying. It is not asking you to pretend your situation is fine. It is not asking you to feel peaceful when you genuinely feel afraid. It is asking you to change what you are using to interpret reality. Because the deepest problem is not the financial pressure itself, it is allowing that pressure to become the lens through which you perceive God's character. The question Jesus is redirecting is this: instead of asking, "What does my bank account say about God's faithfulness?" he is inviting something entirely different. What has God already revealed about himself, and how does that change how I move today? Those are 2 completely different places to stand. One makes your circumstances the authority. The other makes God's character the anchor. Jesus concludes Matthew chapter 6 with an incredibly honest dose of reality. He actually says, each day has enough trouble of its own. He assumes difficulty remains. The invitation is not to a life without hardship. It is to refuse letting tomorrow's imagined weight steal today's faithfulness. Uncertainty is not the same as abandonment. Those 2 things can feel identical, but they are not. Trusting God through financial uncertainty does not mean you stop working. It does not mean you stop planning or being responsible. It means you stop making certainty the condition for peace. It means you hold today's responsibilities faithfully while releasing tomorrow's unknowns back to the one who already knows them. Your Father knows what you need. Not as a distant observer, but as a Father who sees you clearly and whose character does not shift when your income does. That is the ground Matthew chapter 6 is asking you to stand on. Sit with that for a moment. And as you do, it might help just to be honest with what's coming up for you right now, without trying to fix it or explain it away. Take whatever this has stirred in you back into prayer, even if it's just a simple, honest conversation with God about where you are and what you're still trying to understand. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more conversations about identity, growth, faith, and the deeper patterns shaping our lives. And if you think someone else needs this, feel free to share it with them. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What part stayed with you the most? And before you go, there are a couple more reflections waiting for you here on the screen. They explore different parts of the human experience that may resonate with you too. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next reflection.